Hi students, today we're going to look at your leads of your realistic fiction narrative. So today and for the next week, we're going to be looking at the teaching point of today. I want to teach you that writers force themselves to pause, they review what they've written, and they revise it. Today we're focusing on how writers revise the lead because by doing so, they revise their entire story. Sometimes writers do this with help from a pro. So that's actually what we're looking at today. Is we're going to look at published texts. So we're going to look at stories that novels that have already been written and published. We're going to look at how do they start their novels and start their stories. Um, so your lead, if you didn't know, your lead is the beginning of the story. It's the opening of the text. It's what leads the reader into your text. It also entices people to walk through the doorway into your story. So it actually helps them set up what you want them to know. What's the background? What's the setting? What do you need your reader to know before you jump into the conflict and the problem within the story? So looking at the lead section on the rubric, I have the rubric right here. I don't know if you guys can read it from where you're at, but I'm going to read it to you and you can have it in front of you. So it says, I wrote a story that I wrote a beginning that sets the story in motion and establishes a setting. So your lead needs to establish a setting. Your reader needs to be able to know where your story is set and be able to know that from the beginning. It includes details that will be important to the story. These details might point to the main conflict, hint at character traits, or hint at theme. So with that, because it says or on the rubric, that means you only need to do one of those things. So you could say leaving details that point to your conflict. You could leave details about key character traits, or you could leave details that hint at the theme. You only need to do one of those three to hit proficiency on your rubric. So make sure you're always looking at your rubric and you're keeping your rubric close to you. That's going to help you. So looking at great leads. This is the first sentence in The Chocolate War by Robert Cormier. It says they murdered him. Thinking about this, that is such a great, effective lead because it draws you right in. Immediately from the beginning, I want to know who murdered him, who is him, who is they. I want to know all of these things, and that's what you want your lead to do. It makes you want to, it's going to make your reader want to keep reading. The Hunger Games. When I wake up, the other side of the bed is cold. My fingers stretch out, seeking Prim's warmth, but finding only the rough canvas cover of the mattress. She must have had a bad dreams and climbed in with our mother. Of course she did. This is the day of the reaping. Again, it makes it an effective lead because we have our setting created. We know, we can imagine that in our mind. The way that Suzanne Collins talks about the rough canvas cover of the mattress, the way she talks about the having a bad dream and climbing in with our mother. You can imagine these things in your mind. And then it also leaves you kind of wondering so that you keep reading. This is the day of the reaping. Well, what is the reaping? Why is so important? Why would she be nervous? Why would she be scared? Why would she have a bad dream and climb in with their mom? Today, I moved to a 12-acre rock covered with cement, topped with bird turd, and surrounded by water. And that's from Al Capone Does My Shirt. If anybody has read that book previously, um, it's a really interesting way. Again, it sets your setting up, but it leaves your reader wondering. And that's what you want to do. You want to draw them in and leave them wondering so that they keep reading to find the answers to their questions. Let's skip those last two. Talking about what all these leads have in common, all these leads really have the idea that they're setting up or they're creating your character. They're doing something to draw your reader in and leave questions. You want to grab your reader from the very beginning of your story. If you don't grab your reader from the beginning of your story, they're not going to want to keep reading and they're not going to keep going. So keep that in mind as you revise and as you try to make the beginning of your story better. So looking at the beginning of this story, I want you to ask yourself, does it really pull you in as a reader? It was a typical day at the end of June. My mom, dad, brother, and I were at our camp on Rangeley Lake. We arrived the night before at 10, so it was dark when we got there and unpacked. We went straight to bed. The next morning, when I was eating breakfast, my dad started yelling for me from down at the dock at the top of his lungs. He said there was a car in the lake. It's kind of boring. It doesn't really draw us in as a reader. Thinking about how we could take that lead and make it a little bit more exciting. So we're actually going to look at 3 different types of leads that we could revise this beginning into. So we have your action. My slide is kind of all jumbled up, guys, so you're going to have to bear with me right now. So we have an action lead, and that's when our character jumps right in. And with this, Scott, your narrator, actually ignores everything about the arrival. He jumps right in. And I think that's really important is we don't need to know about arriving late. We don't need to know about any of that stuff. That's not important to our story. I gulped my milk, pushed away from the table, and bolted out of the kitchen, slamming the broken screen door behind me. I ran down to our dock as fast as my legs could carry me. My feet pounded on the old wood, hurrying me toward my dad's voice. Scott, he bellowed again. It jumps us right into the action. We want to know where Scott is going. We want to know why Dad is hollering. We even get some really great imagery in there, slamming the broken screen door behind me. You can imagine this. You can see it in your mind. So dialogue. Dialogue is another great way to jump in and start a story. And that's just right there in the middle of a conversation. Scott, get down here on the double, Dad bellowed. His voice sounded far away. Dad, I hollered, where are you? I squinted through the screen door but couldn't see him. I'm down at the dock. Move it. You're not going to believe this, he replied. So with that one, we're jumping right into the conversation. We're jumping right into the dialogue. But I also want you to notice that the writer, he made sure he put in, I hollered, Dad bellowed, squinted. It wasn't just Dad said. Your writer used really good, strong words as the tags for the dialogue. And so this last one is a reaction, a character thing. Coming, I gasped. I couldn't see him yet, just the sails of the boat that had been put out into the lake for the day. I couldn't imagine why my father was hollering for me at 7 in the morning. I thought about what I might have done to get him so riled. Had he found out about the way I talked to my mother the night before when we got to camp and she asked me to unpack the car? Did he discover the fishing reel I broke last week? Before I can consider a third possibility, Dad's voice shattered my thoughts. So with this inner thinking, it really gets us some characterization of who your narrator is and makes you think like, oh man, is he maybe a little bit of a bad kid, a bad boy? Does he sometimes do things that he's not supposed to because everything that he's thinking about is the negative? So today, I want you thinking about how you can revise your story, how you can begin your story. So thinking about, instead of setting it up with a big action, you can set it up with a small action. Think about setting the mood. So really setting like the feeling you want your reader to have at the beginning. Sometimes time and place are revealed slowly, bit by bit, as the character sees or moves into the setting. That's really important too. That's a good way to jump in and let your character or let your reader kind of see things that as your characters see them. And then I'm gonna make this smaller so you can see the bottom of it because it kind of got cut off in full screen. The last way you can is you can look at how to foreshadow the theme or the idea at the beginning, and that's what's on the rubric, hinting at a theme, foreshadowing the theme, thinking about like what kind of lesson might your characters learn from this. So today, you're going to go back and you're going to look at your story. And here, I asked you to write several leads. Don't settle for the first thing you put on paper. Try to begin the story in different ways with action, dialogue, or thinking. Find the lead you really like. Chances are your readers will like it too. So I want you to try 2 leads. So I want you to rewrite your story and I want you to write 2 leads, just the beginning, just that one paragraph. And as you're writing your 2 leads, I want you to find which one do you think is the best. And if you can't decide, maybe you ask your shoulder partner or someone close to you, hey, can you read my leads and decide which one you think is the best? You will turn in both leads. I want to see both leads. So either type them, if you're going to type them in a Google Doc that you can then turn in on Schoology, or handwrite them on a piece of paper and turn them in. But I want to see both leads that you revised today. Have a good day, be good for the sub, and do whatever he or she asks you to do.